배도도 그랬다. 지는데 시합 차이. 상지 시합도 상지래. 대회디 시합도 용마기지 처음 때 싸마서 제대들이 빠타고리 탑주지 보고 그래시. 될 민게데 논나 상제들은 샘공간 내로 장마대래. 대서가 동대 상제. 취재는 대대 조금만 차봐. 조금만 차봐. 대래. 다 조금만 차던데 장마서 탑이다. 도로도 좀 미신저고 다 취래. 취재는 주봉제 저 예동个早上就是人的送这里，他去的碰碰咱们人呢，去了就大家去忙那样，这三这人这个呢，去了就他有嘛嘞，这去了长期也不认识，去了长期就他没把开领过来去，这个等什么什么跑出吧出。有的长期个光芒的人，他这个我们大把人的，全部那种多么多，这把人多那个第七把人嘛都。 참아 추록 탐지를 피만 내리면이요 말이지. 피바대 강리 중에 삼바다 제와는 중고요래. 삼제대 줄에 들이 다다 상쪽 선배 중종으로서는 로베 동네 미제 버스 로가 동네 참아라 미제가 필요가래. 내가 탐지 용원에 디바이는 것도 삼제대 니체 배섬 다 사지게 되고 그러지. 이번에 잡두고요 말이야. 나디가 잡으면 들들 산재 때 받을 주삼 공성제를 다들 이런 거지. 주삼 공성제 받을 산재게 때 말을 못해. 안 잡으는 것들이 마샬라다 요래. 대라들이 나리 사치 모랑서는 상당히 이제 첫대를 유래성을 쟁을 맞대 생각만도 제요로 와시. 오페대 담은 잡는 애들이 저런 라마다 들이 시합된 라마다 들이 주주들이 이하는 개발들이 그때니가 이거 탑들이 सब지 탐들 배워다 되던 자치 보도 들이 망고 종요래 주바되는 요래 고건는 가사가래 로아를 동는 요래 방에 때 강릉은 되게 팬데가 람동 람스데는 맞아 일 팬데도 람동도 봐 대탐지 사지 접을 거래 상대 접을 것이가 상대 요래 술로 상대 용은 조건은 손을 포 세계지 탐지 지레저래 지레트가를 생계래 뭐 인계대 탐지 접대로 말해지 뭐 손을 셋대씩 몸이 지자는 말 내가 로버도 단지도 삼네 인핑을 로지 줄라 제대로 대가들이 지레대도 인계래 접대로 말해 시합을 해 시합으로 인계랑 이게 누구요래 되게 성들이 대 세배 로드리 로드리 피바티는 나발에 핀데 코를 두고요래 누가 당나들이 피 누가 들어간 거 누가야 로드리 다 두고요래 소자 담으면서 오르지 그냥 로그를 코타 말이지 라라리 뵙지도 않는 게 되지 세배 로당 잡도 집이 쳐다 때리야 나는 또 셈네 대래대래랑 사진 좀 되게 랑그 셋는 용서된들 사진 때문에 사진 공부 때마다 랑그 셈 싸워서 대인도 때리지 마 용 말해서
So on the state of Buddhahood, there is no suffering. State of Buddhahood is always in a state of happiness, going from happiness to happiness. That is why we refer to them, the Buddhas, as the bliss-gone ones. And then, on the other hand, there are sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara, appearing temporarily. They're just like temporary ice blocks on the ocean. The Buddha, our teacher, had said, all beings are actually Buddhas. They are only obscured by adventitious stains. Actually, everything is complete within just these words. So the outer example is ice blocks in water. As long as we are in an ice-like state, we experience various kinds of suffering, even though our true nature is water. The ocean water itself, if unfrozen, experiences no suffering. So that's an outer example and representing the inner meaning of the mind. So when the Buddha said, all sentient beings are actually Buddhas. What he meant is that the fundamental nature of the mind is actually Buddha. The omniscient Longchen Rabcham said something in the Treasury of Peace Instruction, the Menga Zoom, which is actually a book that Rinpoche gave me. In there it says, when you realize the nature of the mind, there is no need to read the scriptures, no more scriptures. So when you realize the nature of your mind, that is Buddhahood. The reason why we do not realize the nature of mind is because we grasp at the duality of self and other. So first, we consider ourselves as most important. In the 37 practices, it says all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. Because we consider ourselves as most important, we develop the other 6 afflictive emotions. And these lead to 6 kinds of actions. And these karmas cause the mind to be in a defiled state, just like muddy water or toilet water. Nobody can drink toilet water. But then science has actually also found ways of repurifying this water and make it drinkable again. And that is also an aspect of wisdom. It is said that everything that is done in the field of knowable things or in this world is done by Buddha. So everything that's done by science, for example, is done by this quality of wisdom. And from this quality of wisdom, all the qualities of a Buddha will eventually arise. So science has found ways to purify water and make it drinkable again. And that wisdom also is a Buddha quality. And so when we apply that to the mind in order to purify the muddied water of the mind, we need a skillful method. And that skillful method is great compassion. So when we cultivate great compassion, the mind becomes pure. And to recognize the pure nature of the mind, that is what we call Buddhahood. So whoever sees the nature of their mind is Buddha. It is the mind that is completely pure, like pure water. And so first, the mind is impure, like dirty water or dirty clothing, and we need to wash it. And the method for washing the dirty clothing or water of the mind is the Dharma. The Dharma consists of 84,000 different Dharma teachings, but it is said that all the 84,000 teachings are included within the mind of bodhicitta. And even though in this world many different religions have spread, there is no religion that is not connected to love. All religions accept love and see the importance of love. It is just that different religions have different depths or kind of go to into deep meanings in various different ways. Some have a more profound teachings than others. Ultimately, according to the Buddhist path, we attain the state of Buddhahood through the view of the Madhyamaka, the middle way view. And so all religions really have beneficial aspects that lead into that direction. It is just that for as long as we have not realized the nature of the mind completely, we still possess some grasping in the mind. But other than that, there's no religion that does not possess a beneficial quality. And all religions agree on the mind of love and compassion. And essentially, love is the Dharma. In the Bodhicharya Vatara, it speaks about the only medicine for sentient beings. The only medicine for all sentient beings in the 6 realms of samsara, the only source of all benefit and happiness is love. And that is really what we call the Buddha's teachings. So when we speak about increasing and spreading, upholding the Buddha's teachings, we are really upholding loving kindness. It is that mind that is all pervasive, the mind that is unobscured by self-grasping. And this is what we practice when we listen, reflect, and meditate on the Buddha's teachings. So the Buddha's teachings really is love, and therefore we call it the sun that illuminates this world. And so that is the meaning. Now coming back to this first verse in the fivefold path of Mahamudra aspiration prayer, the ocean-like treasure of loving kindness and compassion. If you have this ocean or this water of love and compassion, then naturally trees and flowers will grow. So again, there are many different religions in the world. Their wisdom manifests in many different ways. There are many great masters in the Dharma and also in a mundane sense, meaning that there are many beings coming to benefit sentient beings in many different ways. So there are Dharma practitioners, there are ordinary worldly beings, there are beings anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara coming to benefit sentient beings, showing them the path to liberation, to happiness. There are those beings who have found peace and happiness within themselves and are able, therefore, to show that path also to others. So in brief, we can say that whoever possesses love, for example, in the Dharma, it is that whoever possesses love, if they are male, they are Chenrezig, if they are female, they are Tara. And they all possess Buddha nature. The Buddha nature is only obscured temporarily by self-grasping. And that temporary obscuration is cleared away by cultivating an altruistic mind. So whoever possesses an altruistic mind, compassion, is Chenrezig. The aspect of wisdom is Tara. One who possesses wisdom will also naturally give rise to compassion. Wisdom and compassion are a natural union. Another outer example is that of electricity. Everything beneficial in this world is also powered by electricity. Electricity can also cause harm, for example, when it powers weapons. But from the side of electricity itself, there is no harmful intent. It just depends on how we make use of electricity. So an outer example of the mind is also electricity or the ocean like water. Then also the Buddha said, to summarize the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha said, completely tame your own mind. This is the Buddha's teachings. So the Buddha's teachings is to purify our own minds and nothing else.
Өөрийнхөө сэтгэлийг сайтар номхруулаа гэж бурхан багш бидэнд зарлигсан юм аа. Түүнийг бид дагаж явах ёстой.
Самцэн дела гэвэлон 주소마데 гэвэлон 주데가리 гэ와 아시바데 호말 гэ와 벤 조고 상제했다고는 라동을 주기 자사세 바데 гэ와 이동 호와 동네죠. 그래가 토말기와 대신치 탐색들을 상제를 믿어봐. 토말기와 바르기와 토말기와 동사 뭐 틀어서 뭐하고 저 지금 같아요. 제는들 저거 상제 탐색 됐다고 그래. 탐색 가리제를 됐다고 차상문이나. 아 따따 때만 내가 사지 샥자탑에 초내라는 로드까지는 좀때 따뜻한 것을 보여. 다른 게 통주제는 봐. 마발로다 만나래봐. 대신 나로봐 때라서 보는지 깝지 이렇게 가야지요. 제 탐지에 다 하고는 게으른 쪽대반에 랑지 탐지를 핀바다 랑나 핀바지는 데와 다 저산 독심 삼지에 해야지. 다대 답고 탑저를 데려드리다 랑을 쏘아가지고 사지 정리되게 장이 서로 초사시바데 다다 남타는 바로도 선바 쪽으로 초사데 사지데 가야 무슨 역대 호바바도 레가티를 다른 팀이 레가티 그리고 호롱 호와들이 다 빼셔서 그러라. 대낭이 대체지 뭐래. 체지 뭐래. 랑 포장 중나라도 지래요. 야 상제도 대노성. 세디 드만다그레스 다바는 주제를 다바 로도랑 게티는 방에 오 뛰어 체력 통타 발선을 되어죠 딱 통타 발선을 되어지대 뛰어는 뛰어 체력이 체력라 대만의 대가로 이제 다 상승을 상태를 해야 돼 대다고 잡아 탑대 다 사제 좀 되는 맞아 서서 학고를 데레데레 파도 서마토가 초사는 다다다지 문암 강에지 남과 탈덕te 받쳤다 봐서 심지만 다는 대다 뭐 심지 탐지 너무 코나 삼네 다 대도 심지 탐지 맞아가 바로 사제게 문암들 문제 사제공 내 반이 있어 그 정도 그래 그 정도를 좀 뒤져야 요 말이에요 오래 가디는 로아를 심지 유마제 레토 심지 탐지 묘는 또노에 뒤줄 삼다는 이게 매매 직장 넘을 뒤기들이 빼는 마다 보여발라들 삼대디 총주의 마다 보여발을 토요래 마다 보연 듯이지 노력세비 당장 마다 보연 듯이지 마가 닥터 마도도르송 빼딜래잖아 노력세비 당장다 마다 보여발 제일 삼대가 좋은 대들 또노도 당장에는 같이 시험하면 내가 그게 내도 봐 답답한 거 리네터 받지는 소조지 봐. 야, 가리도 대도 적합니다. 다 절도 절라래. 대화도 대도 오 대답도 유를 삼대 대사 요리. 다 삼대 유를 주가 요리. 오 삼대의 주베 답고 잠 맞습니다. 들이 다들 도와 미디 물을 못지 인자 삼대의 주베 답고 다 도는 말. 삼대 좀 다 조리. 땅아 조리. 드린 토리 사람이로 주 자체서 드린 도요 말들이 저 조금 동안 찬시 될다서는 드리들 유머 톡게 유머 톡게 달래서 박차장 드 차로를 하고 양짝 차로를 차 아따다 더블 마디가 등에 잡든지 유머를 만족이 찍자요 말 소좀 뭐요 나다고 자고 나라니 다고 나 작업다고 자고 띠라고 작을 마모테 딱지 말 따들이 대사진 초과자 제일 절 소차를 절 약간 좀 미적 적적을 밑에 소들이 따라가고 이제 사도를 띠배고도 되게 뉘라 시합 떠나서 또be 오 약하다고 약해서 또 말이 미다고 약을 약해 제일 뒤도 노트다가 반지 톡실 차공의 데이터가 차는 그 잡을래는 되게 좋아하지 그 좋았던 게 랑걸 좋다고요 말 절만 되는 거 지와 만부지는 돈이 매일 되는데 노용도가 차네 들이 먹기와 쩌째요래시 먹기와 쩌째네 다 딜레다 되게 다 양당하는 메인에 딜레서 보다 속살이가 냠도 좋은 들이 됐다고 차요 그래서 대회를 먹게 되까지 다 하고 그러네 그리고 소트 마지니 막한도 로런게 나고 줄 참았다 보면 잘 이걸 나셀려서 록다서들 록다들 나리 코레 나야 보고리 코도 버리 되게 먹게 있더라 같이라 얘기지 오 취시발 야보 말이지 메시탈이요 말이지 레지 베요마 끼안나서 요마 매매도 오르고리 대도 따르니 받을 거는 대대다 온 잡으러 따르니 받을 받을 요마 뒤따와들 컴퓨터 망보지 대대다 다 레디 요마 막참 매봐 다 로아로 소들 때문에 레 요마데 하 고소나 오 내록실 오 레디 저러 통도 저 마사다 레디 용금만 되어서 하고 다 제들들이 저저저 집에 저 사적 성공나 들이 portava 이 차원을 쫓아봐 사제에 대하고는 들이 발수 쪽을 하는데 로도 라바젤이 동대 그 사제가 사중세도 뭐 디알로그 사총 셈대 세기 오마를 빼야요 그래서 때문에 세기 오마를 말이지 세배 세기 또 차는 호기를 되고 그런 말이지 오 나를 빼대도 상총서만 사제 정도인데 해고사 찍자요 말이지 최담제 말한다고 그 남카를 사제 가리에서 사제 남카르지 남카라 뒤속대 용가 가서 말 빼다 사제 담제 남카를 찍어야지 죽어 남았다고 대답을 자사통네 들이 인도들이 잡초되는 사제 잡초 따오는 심지 처럼 따뜻하게 쉬어 탁대 코다가 좋네. 그렇게 바탕을 박아 드리다. 심지 동제교를 대래들이 따뜻다. 따사쪽도 심지 오고도 당도사쪽도 심지 바도 잠이서는 초다 타만 거 상계에 들이 로아멘 권한이기데. 로아멘 나와줘 대체 페벌면 돈을 사지 좀 되지. 담보를 사지 공 대다 점망한테 심지 나올 때 샤를 말이야. 공사지 문제도 그저 잡아봐 스탑을 내버리지 나가는 양들 버리지 데이터로 좀 들이 데이터에 주시 받대 데이터를 데이터를 데이터 다들 가지고 따서 가고 그러지 누가 고사 가랬다 몇개 쳤다서 가고 그러지 누가 말고는 진짜 다 제외됐다 매일 하고로 말 양합점 매일 매일에서 들이 다 내가 돌아 내서 박차도 박차사한테 데이터를 데이터다
And so in the 37 practices, when it speaks about the treasure of virtue, that really is love. And so first, when the Buddha gave rise to love, that is what is called virtues in the beginning. Love is virtues in the beginning, meaning that first of all, in the beginning, the Buddha attained enlightenment through love. And as a result, he mounted the royal seat, the kingdom of the Dharmakaya for his own sake. So that is virtue in the beginning. Virtue in the middle is that then after having attained enlightenment, the Buddha then engages in the benefit of sentient beings, stirring samsara from its depths or emptying samsara from its depths. That is virtue in the middle. And then virtue in the end is then as a result of such benefit, sentient beings can become mature. So this is actually how it is explained in the Gunshok Chichum, like a Guru Rinpoche practice. And so this is the virtue beginning, in the middle, and in the end. And now, according to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there are many remarkable masters that have appeared, such as Marpa, or Milarepa, or Benchen Naropa, and so forth. And they all endured many hardships for the sake of Dharma. So if we understand that, we understand this wealth of virtue that they pursued. And as a result, they achieved benefit and happiness for self and others, or benefit for oneself and happiness for others. So the cause of all this happiness that they achieved is bodhicitta, or loving kindness. And they knew how to preserve loving kindness. They accumulated it and they upheld it. So first the Buddha gave rise to bodhicitta, and then he accumulated merit throughout 3 endless aeons. So what he accumulated, and you can see that in his life story, what he accumulated is the 6 paramitas. But what he really accumulated with the 6 paramitas is a mind of love. So now we as worldly samsaric sentient beings, what we accumulate is money. We work day and night constantly like an ever-turning wheel to accumulate money. And that is just for the benefit of this life. It is in order to feed our family, our wives and children, and so on. The Buddha said that is mistaken, because this life is just like a dream. And when we understand the 4 thoughts that turn the mind, we know that this life is impermanent. It is subject to disintegration. So therefore, what we should strive after is this cause of virtue, that is virtues in the beginning, the middle, and in the end. That cause that will stay with us from lifetime to lifetime will cause us to proceed from happiness to happiness. And that cause is called bodhicitta, or love, loving kindness. And what the Buddha taught is a method to preserve our love, to uphold our love. And that is something only the Buddha had realized and no one else had realized that. So the Buddha accumulated this love by practicing the 6 paramitas. And it is the Buddha's aspiration to continue to appear for as long as sentient beings exist. The Buddha also said that as wherever space pervades, that is where sentient beings pervade. Wherever sentient beings pervade, suffering pervades. I will continue to pervade them for as long as these sentient beings exist. So on the relative level, Buddha emanations that come to benefit beings with this aspiration appear uninterruptedly. They appear anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara. For example, also in the animal realm. And also within the animal realm, for instance, all beings possess this Buddha within them because there is no one who does not possess love and compassion. At least beings love their own children, and that is the smallest of all love, at least one's own child. And so in this way, the Buddhas love all sentient beings, seeing them as a mother sees her child. But the Buddhas love all beings in the 6 realms, and they want to liberate those who are not liberated and release those not released. And so similarly in the animal realms, animals love their own offspring, or there are some animals who possess a greater level of peace and happiness. They're able to coexist. Many hundreds of animals are able to stay together and protect one another. And that is also due to a cause they have created, the cause of happiness, which is a mind of love. So even the slightest moment of love leads to such happiness. But then this love has to be sustained with patience. So we have love, but we often do not have patience. We do not sustain or protect our love with patience. And even though we have a precious human body, even though we love, we are unable to protect this love if there is no patience in our mind. And mainly that comes down to considering ourselves as most important. I am most important. And that is why we are not able to be patient with others. So for now, we experience God-like happiness as a precious human being. Our 6 sense consciousnesses are distracted by the 5 sense pleasures. We are attached and we possess these sense objects. And as a result of such clinging fixation, we develop the 6 afflictive emotions. We act on them, we accumulate karma and form habitual patterns in the mind. And in this way, the ice block further solidifies, harder ice. And so this is where all the suffering in this world comes from. There is no suffering that doesn't arise from an afflictive emotion. We want to ultimately care for our own well-being. For example, there are some who are in charge of entire countries and they say, I want to care for my country, but it's my country. But actually what they fail to see is that the country really is the people. But then instead of really actually supporting their people, they use their people like objects, like earth or rocks, and they use them to make war and to serve their own self-interest. So they are not really actually caring for their country because their country is really the people. And then there's others who have a greater level of wisdom in their mind, and they understand that if I want to care for my country, I have to take care for my people. So the mistake that arises due to very thick layers of self-clinging, which make the mind be like in an ice block-like state. So that is the cause of all the suffering, all the misery in this world. And it all arises from a cause. If the cause is not created, then no suffering can be created, no suffering can arise. But because we have created the causes of suffering from lifetime to lifetime, we continue to experience suffering, it is because of our attachment to the self, our clinging fixation to the five sense pleasures, and as a result of that, we engage in the 10 non-virtuous actions. And the result of these actions continues to ripen, continues to mature. And as a result of our own actions, those who have accumulated similar karma will meet together. So all of you are probably familiar with the 10 non-virtuous actions. In brief, the 3 non-virtuous actions of the body are to kill, to steal, to engage in sexual misconduct. The 4 non-virtuous actions of the speech are telling lies, slander, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle talk. And then the 3 non-virtuous actions of the mind are covetousness, ill will, or harmful thoughts, and wrong views. And so wrong views is the most detrimental. And we have wrong views. We think that there is me and then there is him. And I want all goodness for myself, and he can just go to ruin. So we naturally have these thoughts. We naturally have negative thoughts towards others. And for example, another wrong view is to say that the Dharma is wrong, and after we have died, we will just be gone like a flower withering. There is no karma, cause and effect. There is no past and future lives, and so on. So these are wrong views that lead to the various sufferings in the world, and many people are holding these kind of wrong views. And as a result of engaging in action on the basis of such wrong views, they experience continuous suffering in the 6 realms of samsara. So if you understand that, and if you understand the nature of the mind, you know that everything arises from karma. Everything comes down, comes back to a cause. And once that cause is created, it is bound to mature. And so therefore, if I create the cause of bodhicitta, then naturally this will lead to liberation. It will cause the ice block of self-grasping to melt. And so this is what the Buddha has accumulated throughout 3 endless aeons when he practiced the 6 paramitas. So the path of practice begins with the reflection on the 4 thoughts that turn the mind, and then creating the cause of happiness, that is bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is like lion's milk. So you may, if you were to ask, is it really lion's milk? Do we really need to have a milk of lion? So that's not the point. That's just an outer example. The example of the lion is given because the lion is the king of animals and doesn't need to be afraid of any other animal. But the inner example it refers to is bodhicitta. Those who possess bodhicitta have nothing to be afraid about. The Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are fearless because of bodhicitta. And because of bodhicitta, they have realized that all phenomena are illusory or dreamlike by nature. The Buddha's mind is vast, all-pervasive like space. The Dharmakaya is like space. And within the space of Dharmakaya, no fear exists. That is the state of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. The mind is like a vast ocean. And they see the ice block state of sentient beings and want to help them melt this ice block. So they strive single-pointedly to help beings melt their ice block. They strive by manifesting limitless nirmanakaya forms that benefit sentient beings. So this is the mind generation, or the mind of bodhicitta, that the Buddha had developed first. Then in the middle, he accumulated merit for 3 endless aeons. And in the end, he attained the state of enlightenment. And he now appears to us to benefit sentient beings. So to us, to our perception, the Buddhas appear, But from the perspective of the Buddha himself, the Buddha has realized that all sentient beings, all phenomena, all appearances are illusory by nature. So no real existing sentient being appears to the Buddha. And the Buddha doesn't really go out to benefit sentient beings, but the Buddha always actually remains in a space-like state. And while he remains unmoved from this space-like state, Buddha still appears to benefit sentient beings through the Dharma. So again, to summarize the Dharma, to practice the Dharma, what do we need? We need to possess patience. And if we possess patience, we are able to protect love, and then are able to refrain from engaging in the 10 non-virtuous actions. If we are unable to cultivate patience, then we will naturally engage in the 10 non-virtuous actions. We will not understand that a result will mature from these actions in future lifetimes. And then we will continue to accumulate karma upon karma and karmic imprint upon karmic imprint. And this is why we now find ourselves in this samsaric world.
Samjay Muli Dirian Matedela, System Deva Chachi Sepaji, Data Muli Mela, Deva de Open Day, Samte Trinis, Pena, Tata, Covid Deva, Tanson, Chata Jagayori, Ya, Chata Jana, Tata Tani, Chata Jamni, Mashi Padan Tarsin, he can't teach what Deva Masidi, no long to Kache, only Naman to woman Deva Yomaris. Yana is. None same to one, no long to him, the same subdays, like a Garchen and Tripianco, like the city of Javioba, take Chakayori. They were Tiwan, Mama, Zopa Latini, some Tatin, Zopa Latini, Territory, Maroon watch top. They are Tsunami in Maroon watch top. The knee, Jambalatin, no long to top. Zopa Latin, Tozambo, Donzi, or Tailwater top. Something did the matter of Zubasonatini, Maroon was a tom of the day. They are then, oh, Captain, the Macarism that are rating. Oh, that is, they are the jetted the gelatin to the jetted average. Not long to you on the Jamaica garden race. Not Maroon was a children garden race. Zondibo, Dondibo, when you eat on a chair on the Zuba garden race. Tell it. The thought in the Santos in the sound on tell the debates on the Zobas were totally 3 maroon body top. Tony 3 Jabber is a dead Mambo Yori that have native bottom that something regarding something the Zubi that was the race. The double major something the Limo want to solo, Tayonte Jetty, they are the Dominion and John Dory. Tommy Cashin and Double Chen, Dominic Canido, Kanye Canido. Jacob Dagamari, Dagamari, the jail or some Don Zuba Siva de Tata. Two Sigi or man, no Sergio Pomago also. Sergio Pomago, no Sigi or Madi. That's a part of Carnage and Punta Parson de Giatri, Jinko Maze, Kali Maze. They can send the Shire, Yammer Sanjay Command Company. Napayam the Deke, Yaman water doing Chamdo, same corner, Churchill, Pashawami, but they are called Tale, massage the Garchen shots. Oh, she let to go, Ludi or Jangman and water, COVID jumped to Ludi or GSO. Temporary Mark condition to this work up to go watch on son. They tamkin water do the heat sound no even about it. Mark Baconax during this. Marilla, some just don't touch upon Mahamao. Dandy the Tachamochi. Nibala day, Dandy the 7 day on top, Sergeant Comma top. 3 day come, that lady must have been 20 days out on Tomatom. 3 times Madame Yambi, taking the someone. Just put it that they were just to put it as I took some race. 대다다 가서 다다 아니 뭐 장치는 게 아마가 받나요래 니디가 받나요래 하고도 도도 받는 상태들이 자체 머리 남들들이 레드메시라 체비바제 상모도 상태들이 자체도 다 참아 파마마도 만메들 상태 자체도 그 자체 뭐에 누 세지마고 주바고 요래 그 주바를 들이다는 걸 메테리얼 왜 정치지는 거는 자타지 담는 탁세기 요래 가래 규모가 초가 두고 거리들이 주바고 거래 주바시 받에 주바면은 다다면은 초아지가 때문에는 나는 뭘 가가도 나뭐 자자 소리 들린다 타요거든 야나 타마를 원하는 거야 창자장을 가야 창기 그러면 며칠이 쉬어도 와 쉬니까 따나 마시러 가도 매고 나티디 저를 잡고 그래 대회들이 쭉 세지 뭐하지 세지 주베베는 주베베는 들이다다 주바 sem을 찌라 오 며칠이 뭐로 사다워 가지는 저함에 봐 어떤 남들이 사마든 얘기들 싫다고 저함에 봐 상태 저함에 봐 대답으로 싫다고 들이 거는 사실 들이가 그랬다 subject 핀바다 데가 some people top 가리는 데이터도 나와야 기타가 들 석상이야 제도 들이 내가 도리게 되어 지면 제가도 사톡 상제적으로 뭐 봐도 저 잠지에 도리 누 세트하고 조바를 때문에 들으는 낭다단 답을 만 담체나 총총 것들 초아 도거니들이 라를 대시 봐요. 그래서 조바고 거요래. 조바만고는 다다는 게 도미만 건종 거요래. 그래 다투고 때리는 애들이 삼지 짜치 뭐냐 봐. 게임을 좀좀 자세라죠. 랑거 쏘다. 랑거 채소 류디 채소다. 삼지는 서자치 버렸다 담고요래. 가을에 채소들 류디 가지는 토로 그랬지. 토로 거든 주제를 다 말해야지. 삼지의 지원을 제로 탐지는 나라미 봐. 사진이 보면 다다 내가 토리 쓰고 대화를 이제 타톡 사진이 고방 맞아봐도 냠도 뭐 도저히 다 사족섭을 해야지. 사족섭을 유래티를 가리 배도 나지 봐요 말해. 나한테 다 말하고 탐지 그 녹화를 이제 작성해 봐야 돼. 내 몸을 독독하고 나서고 너무 그래. 저 임피로 칼라드서는 뭐 쏘고 너는 다 쓰면 보여리 대답지가 싸고 우리 사람들이 대답지 싸만 힘들이 저도 대 총콜소 싸가고 총콜도 그래 대답을 임피를 로드 다치 버리지 챈데 대회는 대답을 조바데 들이 시행을 못하고 보죠 강이 가디 같이는 조바 타는 마요 대문화를 배송 거래 돼 강성벌이 되는 성자와 시당이 소로 받아서 받고서 소도 그런 말이지. 어떤 거 세로시 다다다 라리 소디면 성도아. 다른 이바통제 민다양 가다다는 거 조지는 대우가 니지되거나 될 다른 뭐 자리라는 성도아. 초소로 리드 가는 말이지. 나 상속세도 자치버리 참 대도 삼십아세 조바 타톡 조바 대도 소라 이제 타고는 대는더니 내 같은 타톡가 돼야 토마바드 통타 파서도 게와 들이레베 대외 대는 상속세 동 짜에 붙이고 이바시 맞다 또 로로로 강성의 상속세만 되는데 내가 중대 통고요가 대시 되게 걸로 삼모 양도 당 들이들이 다다 삼모다 다시는 노바 방야다들이 소탕당 조바당 종류 때라서 말하면 얘기해 보여래 대답을 삼았다면 통상 좀 짜지 보지 시고래 제 짜지 보면 저기 다 쏘러 받는 거지 별로 그 도표진이는 세상에 다들 깨라 터는 거 세상만 들이 도는 탈생적을 배나 대답을 삼았더니 세상 쪼여 막았더니 다다다 대성 까바똥도 싸고 개화양들이 개화더니 까똥 그냥 코로테를 요발지 정도가 개화도 짜와니 가리다 삼제 라도 요래 대강 대문 뭐 뛰어가도 쇼로 깝들이 뒤잡네 들 대시 봐요 왜 돌라 삼제 짜치 뭐야 봐 대개랑 좀 맞지 만만데 약간 잡을링 삼아서 차고 삼 리삼 못하면 들이 매번 썰로 동안 담을 풍족 참아들이 다 공시반하니 다들 연거리 때때에 저게 다다 이유함 다도랑함 나니니 아들이 방법을 내 동네에 타면 버젓이 때들이 랑 주제기 딜로들이 다 동네만이 다된 돈이 줘서 대걸로 삼는 다 보다는 저 도원남에 들나게 양 다소들이라 용말이 때랑을 강시시 양의 영용들 라야 데이터 좀 강한 로저셔야 되네 우리 컨트롤을 잡 내가는 약할 패들이 상 약하는 기시지만 용 마망 노세지만 용 로봇 편집을 때 잡을 상태가 다 보자면 되니까 왕롱 저선 다른 냠이 롭장 주바로는 가야면 이제 조바상으로 땅에 들이랑 게 타토가 좀 강대 좀 강대란 말이지 냠이 세상하고 차송 장에 때도 저와 뒤에서 들으더니 terta tatu kangor ta zuba gore de no de la nyamno ke tai choro la bate.
So now we are in this southern continent of Jambudvipa in this world, and as precious human beings, we all should reflect on the importance of the precious bodhicitta, which is loving kindness and compassion. So in this world as human beings, even the slightest happiness arises from this. It is said in the 37 practices, the happiness of the 3 higher realms is as fleeting as a dewdrop on the tip of a blade of grass. But even the slightest happiness is the kindness of love, is because we have developed love. For example, the slightest happiness of a married couple, because of love, they will be able to stay together for the rest of their lives until they die. And that is also connected to patience. They are able to sustain their love because they are able to be patient with each other. For example, if you go to a family, if you visit a family that is wealthy, but they do not get along, there's no mutual love, then that experience is like hell. Visiting them is like hell. But if you go to visit a family that is very harmonious, they love one another, even if they're very poor, you feel very happy there. So even if it's just a mundane activity, if there is true love and patience, then there will be a corresponding result. So in previous lives, we might have cultivated love and protected that love with patience. And as a result of that, we have obtained a precious human body. So generally speaking, it is said that if we practice ethical discipline, we obtain a precious human body. If we practice generosity, we will find wealth. If we practice patience, we will experience a long life, have harmonious relations, and a beautiful appearance. And all of these qualities of generosity, ethical discipline, and patience actually all arise out of love. So ultimately, because of love, we have found the precious human body. And so now, as a precious human body, if you do experience happiness, then recognize the origin of this happiness. For example, if you find yourself being wealthy, then recognize that this is due to having practiced generosity. Or because you have a precious human being means that you have practiced ethical discipline in the past. So every happiness you experience has a precise cause, and that ultimately comes down to love and patience, because you sustained your love with patience. So at the root is the seed of bodhicitta, and the seed of bodhicitta then supports our activities of generosity, ethical discipline, and patience. And all the peace and the happiness in this world arises from these qualities. And there are many people in this world who are very happy and they live their lives in peace. And that is because of love and because they have protected their love with patience. On the other hand, if we fail to do that, if we do not protect our love with patience and instead become controlled by the afflictive emotions, then whatever happiness we have will in the end turn into suffering. There are some people we can see in this world who, even though they possess a precious human body, they always suffer. They always run into difficulties. So not everyone is the same. Not everyone, even in one country, is the same. So in brief, it all comes down to the quality of patience. And so we have said that bodhicitta is like the lion's milk. And this lion's milk must be contained in a golden vase. And the golden vase is patience. So the lion's milk is bodhicitta, and the golden vase that contains the milk is patience. And if you have patience, patience is virtues in the beginning, the middle, and in the end. If you have patience, there is no difficulty and there is no need to be afraid of anything. But if you have patience, that mind of patience will endure. The mind cannot die. After the body has died, one either goes on to attain enlightenment, one merges with space, or one continues to wander anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara. But the mind cannot cease to be. The mind ultimately is beyond birth and death. So understanding that, to recognize that it is important that I observe karma, cause and effect. Because it is only this body that will die. When I die, I will exchange bodies. Lord Jigten Sumgyen said in the Gongchik that which wanders in samsara, the ocean of samsara, is the body. And he said that at the root of the 12 links of interdependence is ignorance. So the fault of all suffering of all sentient beings in the 6 realms is ignorance. It all arises out of ignorance. And because we are ignorant, we do not understand the importance, the preciousness of love and compassion. But instead, we falsely think that the self is what's most precious. And so we create a dualistic reality of self and other, where we are unable to see our true nature. We cannot see our Buddha nature. And therefore, temporarily, we create the 6 realms of samsara. And for example, when we look at the difference between the higher and the lower realms, we can see that by observing humans and animals who coexist. You can see how much more suffering is experienced by the animals. And all of that has a cause. It is a lack of bodhicitta. When we cultivate love, we begin to recognize the preciousness of the love that we have, for example, for our family members, our parents, our relatives, and especially the love that we have for our companions, our spouses, and so on. So that love is very precious. And if you understand karma, then this love will increase to become immeasurable love. So the Buddha cultivated the 4 immeasurables, recognizing that all beings have been my parents, have been my mothers. They are all precious. And the Buddha recognized that in order to sustain love, I need to cultivate patience. So the lion's milk of bodhicitta must be contained by the vessel, the golden vessel of patience. And one who understands that, even if we just give a small example, in a samsaric example, for example, a married couple who understands that will be able to live their lives together until the end. So on the other hand, if we don't understand that, we become carried away, caught up by the attachment caused by the six sense perceptions. For example, there is some who really like the taste of sweet, and then they can't refrain from eating sweet, so they develop diabetes. Or there is some who can't stop smoking and they develop lung diseases. Or there are some who can't stop drinking even until they die. Even though they don't want to die, they keep drinking. So if they don't want to die, then they have to be mindful when it comes to creating the right causes. So we need to create the cause of love that is contained by the vessel of patience. And such a person who possesses this lion's milk of love and the golden vessel of patience is a stable person, and a person that doesn't easily change. He's stable like the earth, like the ground. And inside possesses love and compassion, which makes their mind unchanging. True love is unchanging. And therefore, an example is that of gold, because gold is unchanging. And it is that gold of love that will benefit sentient beings. So in this way, if you cultivate love, then your own mind matures into, your mind becomes, or your intention becomes a true, undefiled, highest intention for sentient beings. And that in turn will lead to the temporary happiness in the higher realms, and ultimately will lead to enlightenment. So all happiness comes back to the cause of love. The lion's milk of bodhicitta must be contained by the golden vessel of patience. So for example, even if you engage in the slightest way in any of the five sense pleasures, when the sixth sense consciousnesses connect to any of the sense pleasures, you need to be mindful and aware and practice patience at that time. Because if you fail to be mindful and lose your patience, that will lead to a lot of suffering in this life. What we need to understand is that ultimately, the ultimate cause of all happiness, what's ultimately most precious is love. And so that is why in the 37 practices it says, those who desire a wealth of virtue, to those who desire a wealth of virtue, all those who do harm are like a precious treasure. We should really reflect what is really more important. Is it my own body, my own life force, or is it love? Normally, we consider our own body as the most important. But in the end, if you think about it, your own body will disintegrate one day. There's nothing we can do about it because it is impermanent. It is subject to disintegration. But the bodhicitta, the love that we have developed in this life, will remain with us even beyond this life until we attain enlightenment. Temporarily, it will bring us to the higher realms, and ultimately it will bring us to enlightenment. So your true companion is bodhicitta. It is by far more important, more precious than your own life force, than your body. And so what is the benefit of cultivating bodhicitta? It is that when you cultivate bodhicitta, the self-grasping disappears. And then ignorance disappears just naturally. And in this way, we overcome the six afflictive emotions. Otherwise, if we are caught up in a mind of self-clinging, then this mind of self-clinging is like a magnet that will naturally attract the six afflictive emotions. You have an altruistic mind, on the other hand, everything becomes positive. For example, if you're just eating food, you would consider all the microorganisms inside your body and think I'm feeding them. And according to the Vajrayana, the secret mantra, in this way, eating with love and compassion becomes a Gana Chakra feast offering. So the altruistic mind is what is most important. And it must be sustained by patience. And that is most important, especially whenever you encounter hardships or difficulties. That is when you must not lose your patience. Milarepa had said, the root of the lower realms is hatred. Therefore, practice patience even at the cost of your life. One's life force, one's body really is meaningless. It will disintegrate. What is most important is that you look after your mind. Again, in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, even if someone, even though you have not done the slightest thing wrong, if someone comes to cut off your head, you would take on their negativities with great compassion. That is the Bodhisattva's practice. So even if someone were to come and kill you today, you would still not lose your bodhicitta, because you know that my body is not important. What's important is bodhicitta. And so this is what the Buddha had ultimately accumulated. It is such patience. And so patience is the ultimate virtue. Virtues in the middle, in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end. So ultimately, that is what we need to cultivate. But first of all, we need to recognize the preciousness of bodhicitta. And we need to recognize that all happiness of all beings, humans, animals, all beings in the 6 realms, all happiness arises from the basis of bodhicitta. Think about this again and again. If you really understand the importance of bodhicitta, you will naturally give up wanting to hurt others, wanting to harm others. And naturally, virtues such as ethical discipline, diligence, generosity, patience, and so forth will arise. So, but first you need to understand the importance, the preciousness of bodhicitta. And you need to come to a resolution where you think, even at the cost of my life, I will not abandon bodhicitta. For example, between friends, when 2 friends get angry at one another, they lose their love, they lose their bodhicitta. So you should think that from today onwards, I will not get angry at my companion. I will bring our love to reach a perfect completion, meaning that we will be together until for the rest of our lives. So anger is something in particular that we have to be very careful about. It is said that a single moment of anger destroys the roots of virtue that we have accumulated in thousands of aeons. And so what is this root of virtue? It is love. And that is lost when we get angry, when we become controlled by anger. So when anger arises, this is where we need to be extremely mindful and careful so as not to lose our root of virtue, which is love and brave. So at all times, remind yourself with mindfulness of the importance of love, and to sustain a thought that wishes for the happiness and peace in this world and the happiness of all sentient beings in this world, and recognize that all the conflict and wars that we just mentioned before arises out of a lack of love. It arises out of self-grasping. So ultimately, if we hold on to self-grasping, it will lead, first of all, it will lead to the ruin, the downfall of others. And in the end, it will lead to our own ruin. It is our own detriment. It will lead to birth in the 3 lower realms, from which it is very difficult to become ever liberated again. The root of all such misery is our selfish, self-cherishing mind. Again, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. So think about this really well, my friends. I'm sharing with you these words really just from my own personal experience. I do not have much learning. I do not have many other great qualities. But what I've learned, I've mainly learned in my time in prison. I spent 20 years in prison, and during this time, I practiced being very careful when it comes to anger. And I can say that throughout this time, the labor that I had to perform, I did so in order to benefit the country. And never once did I have a thought of hatred towards the country. Never once did I have a thought of hatred towards a single person. I was always very careful to protect my mind from anger arising. And I would like to impart that also onto you, my friends. Be very careful when anger arises. Again, I'm not someone who possesses much learning, much studying. I do not have many vast transmissions and empowerments and so on. But I have reflected on patience, and my main place of practice was the prison. And so what I'm imparting onto you is really just my own personal experience. And what I learned from this time in prison is that I must by all means practice patience. And so this, my friends, this is the experience I would like to share with you.
Doctor nga sang tang pen na lo nam je zong thong so de lo tong lo de me ma tong de ngi ka che yo de ge tong ga wa ka che yo de nang ji de ni sang lo tang de ngi re ji lo sang lo tang lo ba dong ngi ji tang ji dong ngi se me sha la de le lo se ba ma ji ba yo ma da de ji ngi dong ni ju da de ji le ngi yo de pa sa je tang ji mo nam de ju su yo sa je tang ji mo nam de dong ngi jot se mo nam re de ju ju mo nam da ja ki chi mo yo re de dong ngi ji sa mo tang di donge de gom tini pola tere monam te sanchok se jote mare pa dadi ki legre tini pola sanchok se tere setta pa de legi ju che ta ba te do jo monam yang ta na songa ya go yo le tere chaba la trashi de le
And one more important thing I would like to mention is that in order to cultivate bodhicitta, it is very helpful to read the Shantideva dedication prayer from the Bodhicharya Vatara again and again. And so when you read this dedication prayer, you read through various kinds of suffering and really bring them to mind. For example, when you read about the suffering of blindness, then bring to mind the suffering of someone who is actually blind, who cannot see anything. And then imagine they would somehow regain their sight. How much happiness would they experience? So reflect in this way as you recite through each of the different sufferings that are stated in the Shantideva dedication prayer. And whenever you come to a certain suffering that you read about, a feeling of unhappiness or of discomfort should arise within you. And at this time, you're actually practicing Donglen. You're actually taking on the suffering of others at that time of reflection. And then you continue to read on the aspiration of all the Buddhas of the three times, on how they want to dispel all that suffering from sentient beings. So the Shantideva dedication prayer is a very important prayer because as you recite this prayer, you really reflect upon each different kinds of sufferings. So first, as you recite a certain kind of suffering, you read through a certain kind of suffering, you reflect on that, you bring that suffering to mind. And then as you go on reading, you come to the antidote to that suffering, the aspiration of the Buddhas. Basically, the antidote to the suffering is bodhicitta. It is the antidote to the cause of all suffering, that is ignorance. It is karmic actions created with a self-grasping mind. bodhicitta is the antidote to all such karma. And as you read through this prayer, think that may these karmas be severed, may they be brought to an end through the antidote of bodhicitta. So I encourage you to recite this particular prayer over and over again.
Зориулга ерөөдийн хэсгийг бол одоо ингээд та бүхнийг уншиж байгаарэ гэж ингэж та бүхэнд зоригжуулан хэлмээр байна.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
За ингээд энд оролцсон бүх хүмүүстээ баярлалаа та бүхэнд.
Practice patient with bring the love and the compassion together.
За ингээ хайр энергийн сэтгэлийн тусламжтайгаар өөрсдийн төвчээрийг чинадад хүргэх, төгөлдржүүлэх тэр амжилт хүсье.
For use for our own practice. So that's very important. Sometimes we hear lots of teachings, but we use for others, and then become is not pointing to our own, so pointing to others for teaching, then that become is teaching is misunderstood. So that's why we receive teaching such profound like this. We always have to look to ourselves, use ourselves, use the important is I think our mindful. So mindful is important. Rinpoche giving this very important teaching. So example, like today, the country leaders kind of like use other people, country people. So that kind of situation we have every single day, we use like others, like depending like our individual level. So all this kind of like we have to bring to our mind, for daily practice. Whatever we're doing something is really watch our mind and then use the action or speech and the body. So I think this is very important. So we have to always bring these teachings to our own practices. We are so fortunate, and the Rinpoche is sharing teaching directly for us, and we have to recognize we are all fortunate in this planet right now, and then use this practice ourselves. So we have to benefit for others. That's most important. Right now we recognize in the world it's not that, it's great, it's so much difficult, it's so much negative is arising. So we have a special master like Guru, Garchen Rinpoche, rare Bodhisattva, and we have an opportunity to receive teaching from him. And we have to like use these practices, follow his footsteps, his path. So that's the just remind myself. We have I remind myself and also brothers sisters, Dharma brothers sisters. I try to just remind you that. And then also thank you to today the organized and the GBI, all the staff members and the Digon Dhammasaya staff members, all this bring this teaching together, and also Zom organizer. And then also we have Amanda Digon Dhammasaya. She sent beautiful emails all the time. I think you receive. So thanks very much, Amanda. All this beautiful information sharing for teachings for others. So now I'm going to chant the dedication prayer.
За ингээд зориулга ерөөл одоо уншиж төгсгөё.
Dorjechang, Telopa, Naropa, Marpa, Malarepa, Dharma Lord Gambopa, Pamotropa, and Lord Digompa, please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessing of all Kaju Lamas. By this virtue may I achieve any change. By defeating all enemies, confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara. Bodhicitta, the excellent, precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise, where it is unborn, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray the Lama may have good health. I pray the Lama may have a long life. I pray that your Dharma activity suffer far and wide. I pray that I may not be suffering from you. As Manjushri Vero realized the ultimate state, and just did Samantha Bada. I will follow in their path
Өнгөрсөн
and
одоо
fully
ирээдүйд
dedicate all the
хураасан
merry
алив сайн
force
буян
sentient
бүхнээ
beings.
их болсон 6 зүйл
By the blessing of the Buddha, so
төгсгийгээр
attain the three
хүрхүйсэд
kayas.
зориулъя.
By the blessing of the
Баатар
true of
манзуушийн
unchanging
хэрхэн
Dharma as
тойлсон
such.
саманд бадраач
By the blessing
түүнчлэн
of the
ерөөсөн
indivisible Sangha,
агуу
order
тэднийг
made the merry
өдрөөлөн
Ashe bear
дуурайж
fruit.
ариун буйнаа бүрэн
By this
зориулъя.
virtue, collected at the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and the nirvana, and by the inner rule of
Огторгүй
virtue, may I and
хизээ
all
хүртэл
sentient beings
оршин
quickly
тэр
attain
хүртэл бие оршоод
unsurpassed,
олонний
perfect,
зовлон
complete,
гайрлах
and
босгүй.
precious enlightenment.
Амьтны зовлонг
May the
өөртөө
teachings
аваад
of the
амар
great Digomba
амгаланг бусдад
Ranachari,
өгөх
who is
босгүй.
omniscient Lord of Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation, until end of the samsara.
Амьтны зовлонг ангаах гагцсан амгалан бүхэн гарахын оронд дээдийн
Thank
номыг
you.
олохыг хүсвэл алив сайн үс өнөд удаа
Lord,
унших болтугай. Та бүхэнд баярлалаа.
Can I speak now?
Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Colin, please go ahead. Go on.